All right. Back. Good morning. Good evening. Good afternoon, wherever you happen to be in the world. Captain Coder. It is 4:33 a.m. here in the Arizona desert, where I reside. Currently reside. Maybe indefinitely. Get into it. Well, today we are gonna try to do admin and code day 3. I feel confident I can do it. Probably the first 10 days I can get through, no problem. 10 days, I think, no problem. I could probably get through all 25. Some of the second puzzles might be a little tricky. I'm a pretty smart dude. Maybe I should be a little bit more. I'm gonna try to get through all 25 on my own without any the outside help I might get might be like, oh, how do we, let me go refresh myself on programming or some obscure algorithm. I have a bachelor's in computer science. I have a BS. I went to grad school and studied computer science. Worked on a PhD for a while actually, but didn't finish it. Decided it wasn't for me. All right, let's take a look here. Let me get workspace open. Here we go. Let's check out my main. Yeah, main. We are gonna get a folder going here for day 3. Day 3, what's the name of this one? Rucksack reorganization. Rucksack. Day 3. Alright. Alright. .NET console. And if anyone wants me to see these in a different language, I'd be happy to do it. I'm just doing C# because that's sort of where I'm practicing. Trying to get good at C#. Maybe I should do some F#. Wanting to do some F# right there. And get our program open here. Let's read the problems. One elf has the important job of loading all of the rucksacks. Supplies for the jungle journey. Unfortunately, that elf didn't quite follow the packing instructions, so a few items now need to be rearranged. How should I pronounce that? Imstrudel? I'm Strudel. Thanks for coming by. Bring you over here just so we got the chat on the screen for anyone watching in the future. Worked on my bachelor's in computer science for 3 years, but then COVID happened and went downhill from there. I can only imagine having to be in school, in college, while COVID's happening. That sounds like a horrible thing. So I'm a teacher, so it was rough on students. It was really, really hard on students. But I can't imagine having to be a student. It sounds very hard. Yeah, I got my bachelor's back in 2007. I went to grad school. I was studying computer science education. It just research and publications. Well, there's a lot of reasons. I'm not gonna get into details. But let's focus here. But thanks for stopping by. Thanks for the chat. But yeah, I did 3 years of grad school, so I have what I'd call a higher education. I've been programming for 25 years too, over 25. Each rucksack has 2 large compartments. All items of a given type are meant to go into exactly one of the 2 compartments. elf that did the packing failed to follow this rule for exactly one item type per rucksack. The elves have made a list of all of the items currently in each rucksack. The inputs, but they need help finding the errors. Every item is identified by a single lowercase or uppercase letter. That is A and capital A. Okay, so case sensitive. The list of items for each rucksack is given as characters all on a single line. A given rucksack always has the same number of items in each of its two compartments. So the first half of the characters represent items in the first compartment, while the second half represent the character in the second part. Let's read that again. There's the same number of items in each of the two. Okay, so it's saying that there's going to always be an even number. You can always do an even split. There will never be an odd number of things. For example, suppose you have the following list of contents from 6 rucksacks. So each line is a rucksack. Load our data into rucksacks. The first rucksack contains these items, which means the first compartment contains items this, so this is the first half, so the second compartment contains this half. The only item type that appears in both compartments in lowercase is E. The only item that appears in both compartments is P. Is that true? Oh, there it is. P and P. Okay, so we're sort of trying to find a set difference here is what it looks like. You want to find the union where they're the same. It's saying that each sack will have exactly one letter that's the same between the two compartments. So each time a compartment, each rucksack has 2 compartments, and each compartment will share exactly one item. Okay. To help prioritize item rearrangement, every item type can be converted to a priority. Lowercase a through z, uppercase capital A through z. Okay, so 1 through 26, and then 27 through 52. All right. The above example, the priority of the item type that appears in both compartments of each rucksack is 16. Okay, and the sum is 157. Find the item type that appears in both compartments. What is the sum of priorities of those items? Okay, so we gotta find the union of the two halves, and then we have to sum them up. So everything has some value. We can use some hacky solutions too. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and do. So I want to do an over-engineered approach. Let's because this one's. I feel like this is. I guess yesterday's puzzle actually wasn't that challenging, but I did an over-engineered solution. So I'm considering doing an over-engineered solution for this one. Cool. Strudel, what program have you done? Have you done these yet? Are you doing Advent of Code? So, let's get this sample. Shouldn't be too hard. For this part, we'll see what the next part. Sample.txt. I guess I should learn how to make my programs read in art. C# pass in art. C# top program in art. Gotcha, you did the first part. Cool. Doing top level arguments in C#, so normally you'd have this main thing with args here, but I don't have those. Multiple argument. Args just, well, yeah, but I want to do it in level. This wasn't all. Is there a variable called args here? Arguments after dash passed in. Do I just have a variable called args here? Console.WriteLine. Gotcha. I'm just curious. I've never used so in C sharp. It's here. The latest C sharp 6, maybe 5. Anyway, the most recent long-term support version of C sharp added these what's called a top-level statement. Previously, you'd have to do something like this. Public static. And previously, you'd have to write code like this, and then your code goes in your main method like this. And so it was very obvious where args was from. In the most recent versions, you can have a single file that is top level like this, and it just assumes it's your. And I just wasn't sure how to do args, so I wanted to get here. So I haven't been writing it, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna load this file in. String array sax. File.read all lines. Args of 0. Pass that in here. Console.WriteLine. Next. Just to get line count. .NET run sample.txt. This is working. What's going on? Cannot convert. Oh, it's an array, so it's sax.length. It was a list. It would be sax.count. But yeah, I'm pretty new to C sharp. I've only been doing it a little while. I teach an introductory C sharp course. So I'm always trying to improve myself. Next term, I am teaching a class on an introduction to competitive programming. So I'm building up some videos to try and use for that. All right, so we have it here. All right, so we got to get the first half and the second half of the word. So we're gonna loop through for each string sac in sat. I'm gonna go through them all. We're gonna split it into the first part and the second part. We can use substring here. So string sac 0 is gonna be sacs from 0. Can I do substrings this one? Dot length divided by 2. Not sac. I guess I thought there might be some nice. I swear there was nice syntax. Okay, let's do a quick search. C sharp substring syntax. I could always just use the substring method. I just thought. See, I'm amazed C sharp doesn't. Shorthand, I swear it did. Nah, sworn. So we'll do sac.substring 0 and then the length. So sac.length divided by 2. So that's this first sac. And then this one should start at sac length +1. I'm not 100% sure. And then it also is doing the length, not the ending. Let's see if we get it. Console.WriteLine back 0. So we'll do sac goes to sac 0 and sac 1. Yes, C sharp is incredibly similar to Java. If you know Java, switching to C sharp becomes relatively easy. FPP. Okay, there we go. Yeah, this splits it in half like that. C sharp is incredibly similar to Java. In fact, in my mind, I often feel like the Microsoft they basically said everything you hate about Java we're gonna try and fix in C Sharp. That seems to be what they've done here, and I've kind of fallen in love with C Sharp a little bit for that reason. Although I haven't used Java professionally in many years. I did a lot of Java back when Java 8 was the new big thing, and so I feel like there's probably a lot of new features. Yeah, you should definitely try C Sharp out. If you do, look, I'm not paid to promote this book, but C Sharp Player's Guide. I think my camera's backward. C Sharp Player's Guide, excellent, the best book in my opinion for learning C Sharp. It gives you a nice high level overview. The first 14 chapters you'll probably breeze through if you have any kind of programming background, and then it gets in. Fantastic book. So we're trying to find the letters that are the same between these two. So we're gonna find, let's see here. I feel like the simplest code way to do it is to do a set union. Can I do that? Nice and easy. I could write a loop that just sort of checks to see, does this character exist in SAC 0? Does this character exist in SAC 1? I could sort these and then find the diff, something like that. I'm gonna see if I can do char array. So I have this as a character array now, and I do a two hash set. Let's do a var here. All right, so we're gonna turn these into hash sets. So we've abstracted, and I'm hoping, so this really is a hash set of char, I'm hoping. Yeah. Hash set of char. Then can I just do the union? Sac 0.union, yeah. Union sac 1. Excuse me, it's early in the morning, so got a little bit of a thing there, so I apologize if that's coming through on my microphone. And what's the return type of this? It's gonna give back an enumerable. Can we just get the first? That should give me char, right? Char match. Console.writeLine match. Let's see here. Ooh, that doesn't look like correct. First one should have been a P. B. Interesting. VJ. E. What have I done wrong? The first struct set contains means, well, the second, all right. So the union's not working the way. What is the set union? Oh, the set union. I don't want a union. I want to find. Oh, maybe I was right. Right. The first time. I want to find where they match. What is that called in set? Okay, so we have union. What is it called in? Let's look at our method here. Maybe these methods will. I don't want the union. The union's going to combine them all together. I want the difference will subtract the thing out. I want the one where the part in the middle. Why can't my brain remember this word? Intersection. There it is. Intersect. Sac 0.intersect sac 1. There we go. I want to find the intersection, not the union. Union puts them all together. There we go. PL, PL, capital P, V, E, S. There we go. All right, so now I have the match. And I just got to score this down. And so I'm pretty sure I can do the following, where I just say, all right, so I'm going to turn it into an integer. So int value equals int match. Hang on. I'm going to do match minus lowercase a plus 1. 90% sure. I can do this. Although it might be minus capital A. These might give me. Yeah. Capital A? Is that right? What am I? But now they're swapped, is that right? So in ASCII does the, hang on. ASCII. This is like my brain. I'm like, I know I can do something with that. Here, ASCII table. Does it start with lowercase a? It starts with capitals first. And then it does lowercase. That's sad. All right. I'm gonna do something kind of hacky here. I know that my values should go in this order. Value index equals, and I'm just gonna put them out here. A, B, C, F, G, H, J, K, L, N, P, E, and then capital H, I, J, T, U. E. This is my lazy hack. My lazy hack here is to do the following. We say value index dot index of match, and that's just gonna give us the number back. This is dumb. You shouldn't do this. Make sure our numbers are right. So we should get 1638, 42, 22, 20, 19. So yeah, that's our hacky solution there, and then we're just gonna sum it up. So gross. And then sum plus equal. Oops, just it there for a moment. And if I was code golfing, I could do a bunch. Int. Yeah, ORD. Well, I think, wouldn't ORD give you the same issue I had where it was the subtraction issue? Where it was like reversed. Yeah, so I could do a check to be basically say, is it lowercase, is it uppercase? Value. Sum plus equal value. This, and then let's output my sum. $157. So this is slow. So let's point that out, that this is just a bad hack. It's slow. I have to, I mean, technically, if we're talking big O notation, it's O of 1 because I know the length of this, but it's pretty slow because it has to loop through this index of, loops through and pulls it out to find the end. So there's a loop happening here. This is not an optimized solution by any means. What I would call a hacky solution. All right, let's get my input. Just real quick. And I open that up, pop it in. So I'm pretty sure what ORD's doing is just getting the ASCII value out. Input. All right. Let's see if this does not have a typo. It might have a typo. It'd be very easy to have a typo in there. All right, 1 gold star. We need a part 2. Part 2. So if I was doing it without ORD, I could do the following. I could do the, say value, and I would say, oh my keyboard. That's interesting. There it goes. So I type over here. I can't type. What is happening? I have to reload this. Hang on. I can't type in the editor for. What is happening? I reload now. Gotcha. Yeah, Stack Overflow could be so you know knowing having a strategy is half the battle. Then figuring out how to do that thing is it's sort of figuring it out. So what I could do here is I could say, okay, character char dot is upper. All right, so I'm gonna say if my character is uppercase, then my value is gonna be match minus a, like that. Otherwise it'd be match minus lowercase a. And then that whole thing I want to add 1 to. So I could put a +1 there. But I'm gonna put this like this, +1. So this would be like a slightly more efficient solution. Ooh, I did something wrong. +1. It is upper. Oh, +27 on that side. +27. All right, I'm plus. So was that my answer I had before? Yeah. So what this is doing here, it's telling me in my parentheses. So in the case that it's uppercase, I basically subtract capital A, which I think is 67 or 68, add 27, and it's lowercase, I subtract lowercase a and add 1. Right. So there's part 1. And we don't have this hacky thing here. Although, I don't know which is easier to read. Which is easier to read and understand? Probably this. But you have to have knowledge that, oh, these are, the characters have value. Okay. Let us read part 2. Let us read part 2. And thank you for the follow, Strudel. I appreciate that. As you finish identifying the misplaced items, the elves come to you with another issue. For safety, the elves are divided into groups of 3. Every elf carries a badge that identifies their group. For efficiency, within each group of 3 elves, the badge is the only item type carried by all 3 elves. That is, if a group's badge is item type B, then all 3 elves will have item type B somewhere in the rucksack. And at most, 2 of the elves will be carrying any other item type. Problem is that someone forgot to put this year's updated authenticity sticker on the badges. All the badges need to be pulled out of the rucksack so the new authenticity is matched. Additionally, nobody wrote down which item type corresponds to each group's badges. The only way to tell which item type is the right one is by finding the one item type that is common between all 3 elves in each group. Every set of 3 lines in your list corresponds to a single group, but each group can have a different badge item type. So, in the example above, the first group's rucksacks are these 3. Okay, so we're grouping them by 3s. And the second group, that. So I need to basically pull out groups of 3. In the first group, the only item type that appears in all 3 rucksacks is lowercase r. This means this must be their badges. In the second group, their badge item must be Z. Priorities for these are still found to organize it. Signature attachment, here they are for the first group. Here they are 18R, second Z. Find item types for each 3 elf groups. What is the sum of the priorities of those item types? Okay, so we need to, now it's essentially the same problem, but we're grouping by 3. Very, very similar problem. So this, taking each line and turning it into a set and then finding the intersection of all three sets. That's essentially what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna wrap this here with void part 1. So format, and we're gonna start on part 2. Void part 2. So we need to group every 3 lines into a group. So and my sacks, and I essentially want to do the following. I need to group them by 3. I'm trying to think, is there a short way to do this with link? Nah. I want to find I want to split on every 3. Split 3. I'm wondering if there's a split function. So essentially so I'm gonna write a function. I want a function that gives me a list of string array, like this: get sacks, sack group. Okay, so it's gonna take in my sack array, string array, sack. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna go every 3. It's gonna make a new list, and every 3 it's gonna put them in there and then return that list of string arrays. I think we're gonna do it this way. So we're gonna say, I'm gonna do sacks dot toList. This will just make it slightly easier because I want to be able to pull things out, or I can, well, we'll do a for each. String sack and sacks. First thing is I want to get my sack groups, and we'll have our list here, list string array groups. We are gonna make that above, and at the end we're gonna return it. So the idea is to build up the sack. So my idea here is say, well, if so I have to, so I'm gonna need a string array current, and we're gonna have this be a new string array of 3. So it's gonna be 3 strings in it. So we have spot for 3 strings, and we're gonna say if groups.count is less than 3, because that's what we're grouping by, then we are gonna put hang on. Idea is not quite right. I want to build up these stack arrays. I did list of lists. Here, I'm gonna do a list. All right. Once again, proving that using lists is much easier than using arrays, which should seem relatively obvious. We're gonna have a list of strings. Current. So this is our current group. We have groups. We're going to say if current dot count is less than 3. So if our current has less than 3, we're gonna fill it up. So we're gonna do current dot add sack. Right, so we're gonna add that into our sack. Else, well, maybe we should always add it in. Yeah, so current dot add. We're always gonna add the sack to our current, and then we're gonna say if, here we go, if current dot count is equal to 3, So if we have 3 things in it, we need to get another current. We are going to create a new current. Current equals new. That. And then we add it to our groups. Groups.add. And we need to do that here. So there's a little bit of repeating code here, but I'm okay with it. All right. So we just keep throwing guys into there. When we reach 3, we say, okay, we're done with that sack, make a new sack. And now we have a method that's getting us our sack group. So we start out and we say we get our list of string sacks or groups is equal to get sack groups on all of our sacks. So this should be groups of 3. We're going to say for each group in our groups, we essentially need to do this thing here, where we build out 3 hash sets and then do it all. So we're gonna use a higher order function here, I think. So group dot select. So we're gonna turn them all into hash sets. So we have a group here, goes to so this is a single sack. So this is a group has a bunch of sacks, and these sacks we're gonna do sack dot to hash set. So now we have a list of hash sets, and then we want to aggregate them all. Okay, so we're essentially gonna do a for loop here, and I'll break this down a little bit because it's getting a little bit I would say a little bit tricky for anyone who's not quite sure what's going on here. So we have our aggregation function is sort of like a for each loop that goes through, says do a thing and apply the same function to all of them. So we have our aggregate, we have our next, and then the function that we're gonna apply. Function. All right, so this is going to be a function that takes our aggregate next and produces really it's just going to do this ag dot intersection next dot to hash set. Yeah. Okay. Little bit tricky to follow if you're not sure what these methods do. So select sort of works as a for each loop, right? And it's saying for every item inside of this list. So I have a sack. We're going to turn it to a hash set, and then we're going to just for each one of those hash sets, we're going to check the intersection of them all together. So do an intersection on all. And then this should get us back the first. We're going to say get back the first. So we should have, oh, we got to turn them to, hang on. Sack dot to air array dot to hash set. Like, okay. And this should give us back a single character, which happens to be our match. Right. I know this is a little tricky to follow, maybe. So I'll, in a moment, I'm gonna break it down into maybe some easier to follow things. So we're gonna match like that, and real quick, we'll just do a console.writeLine on the match so we can verify the sample. I call part 2. Part compilation. Let's call it on our sample. Sequence contains no elements. Interesting. All right. I did had R. Look at this. What is my? There are 6. Why did it try to do another one? Oh, because the group, I added a group with only one thing in it. So I actually, all right, let's do it this way. We only add, my keyboard stopped working again. That's super weird. I don't know what's going on with that. All right, so we're gonna do it this way. We only add it in once it has 3 things. All right, so then we get R, we get Z. Okay. And then I'll skip. Yeah. All right, so we have R, we have Z. Let's come back to our program. And then we need to do this sum here. That. So we'll make sum int sum. And then we'll output console right line our sum. Like that. This is a little tricky to do. Not as fun as yesterday's problem. I really liked yesterday's problem. Was much more fun. Or much, I don't know. I thought yesterday's problem was a little bit more interesting. Let's try 70. See if that works for. That's not right. If you're stuck, make sure you're using the full input. What did I do? Oh, I didn't use my input file. Now I gotta wait. That's okay. I think it tells me I have to wait 60 seconds to submit it. That 70 seemed really low. Yeah. 36 seconds. All right, we'll try again in a moment. But this is I think this is kind of hard to read. So I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna clean it up. I'm gonna break it down into each individual method that I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna make a video. Been making videos about the past couple days, about day 1, day 2, day 3. So on my YouTube channel, I have some videos that break it down into, you know, an approach. It doesn't just give you the solution right away, but how to approach it. What are the things we're looking for? What are the things we have to do? So we have to be able to, in this first one, we have to be able to split the string. So break it into 2 strings. So we have sac1, sac2. And then we need to be able to do a intersection on those 2 things. If you're able to do those intersections, you're able to pull it out. And then finally, you have to have something that converts your letters to an integer. And for this part 2, we need a thing that breaks it up into sacs, and then essentially the same thing for those groups, converts them to sets, and then checks the set. All right, let's see if we can submit this now. There we go. 1 gold star. That's what I'm always working for. Getting those gold stars, getting that little praise there. All right. So let's I don't know if clean up's the right word, but let's break this down into the sections of what I'm doing here. So this right here is actually giving me back a and what's called an IEnumerable of hash sets of characters. All right, sets. So this thing here is actually this line. This line here is taking my, so I have my get sacs. I put it in, it breaks it into groups of 3. This line of code here is pulling those out and getting me sets. So I have a hash set of all of them. So each one, you get a hash set. And then if we do the following, so I'm gonna make this a list instead. To list. So if I wanted to convert this to a for loop, you might be interested. So this is called a higher order function. This is making it so that I don't have, it hides the for loop for me under the hood, so I don't have to go through the process of doing it. So we'll write out that for loop, what that would look like. So it would actually look like this. Instead of this line, I would do list of hash sets equal new. I'd create a new list. And I'd say for each sack in group, every sack in my group, I'm gonna add that. I want to turn it into a hash set. So sack.toChar array. So get all of the characters, put them in an array, and then convert that to a hash set. So take those characters, make it a set. Mathematically, a set is it's kind of like a list. Except you can only have one of each element. So it's gonna go through and make sure that there's only one of each element in there, and then we'll add that sets.add. So this for loop here, these lines of code are essentially what this chunk of code here do. This line of code looping through. There. Strudel's asking, do higher order functions increase time complexity? Like you have the loop, then use that function. Does it go O of n squared? Yeah, so this is essentially O of n squared. It doesn't, it does sort of the naive thing. So select should be sort of read as for each. It says for each, go through everything, and then essentially I have a function on the inside. So check it out. Let me write this function here. So I'm gonna write a function called, so the idea is each one of these strings is getting turned into a hash set of char. Okay? So what I could do is I could say to hash, group to hash set. All right, now I'm gonna make this take in a string, which is my sack. And really, it's this code here, return this thing. So one of the things that's cool, I don't know if cool is right word, I've essentially defined this arrow, this equal sign and then greater than, is defining an anonymous function. It's saying, well, I have some function that I wanna run, but I haven't given it a name. I could actually just put group to hash set here. So I'm saying select, and the way I'm selecting is using this function. That's why the full path and not in VS Code. So my guess is the version of .NET you're using. So it's not that in VS Code I don't have to. It's that I'm doing it as a top level function. So by default, it's imported. So you might in Visual Studio, you might have to do using like system.file, system something. Where is this coming from? Let's look at where system.io.file. So in system.io, in the newest version, or not even, this is in .NET 6, this is unnecessary, an unnecessary directive. So it's already sort of provided by default. So it could be that your Visual Studio is using a different default .NET. So this is just new. Maybe in .NET 7 you have to specify it again. That would be my guess. And it also could just be that I'm using a top level. So if I was doing this as a class, I might have to do it. It could very well be that I'm just doing it as a top level program. So notice I'm not wrapped inside of a class. Yeah, let's check it out real quick. Great question here. Eiffel, if else Google, gotcha, if else Google. Let's do a test.cs. All right, so if I were to do a public class test, and I had a public static void method. Could I do file here? File dot read all lines. Simple dot. I could. Let me look. All right. Hang on. Let's look at my CS here. Implicit usings. That's what it is. So in my CS proj file, I think I have a bunch of things. No, that's not it. I don't know. That's a good question. I'd have to do a little bit more research to understand. My guess is that for your project isn't using some default input. All right. So anyway, I had here previously, let's go back. Getting a little distracted. Good question. This is an anonymous function. I think in this context, it's kind of easy-ish to read, but that's essentially what this does. So Strudel had asked, does that make the complexity any better? Selects is O of n, and then if your inner function happens to be something that's not that's O of n as well, then you'll get O of n squared. So good question. Okay. All right. So there we have it. A little solution here. Same thing going on here. Oh, this aggregate function. That's what I was going to do. This higher order function is really confusing for people who haven't really used it before. So I wish I could give you a better answer. I guess I could fire up Visual Studio and try and figure it out. But essentially my guess is that the project you're on happens to do that. Here, let me see what happens. Let's see. Curious if it is looking around. My mouse is giving me trouble. Mouse being kind of fidgety. Maybe I need to unplug it and plug it back. I know that that's the IT thing. I gotta unplug it and plug it. Let's see. .NET restore. .NET build. Okay. Yeah, check it out. All right, it is this line. This implicit usings in my CS proj makes it so that all of my system stuff is imported by default. So in your CS project, you do not have, in Visual Studio, in your project, for whatever reason, you do not have implicit usings turned on. So when I took this out, it gives me all of the errors when I try to build, that basically says, hey, all of these things are not imported. The name file does not exist. So it's this in my project file. When I do .NET New Console, it adds that in there by default for me. Maybe in .NET 7 it doesn't. I don't know. I'm not on .NET 7. I'm using .NET 6 still. Okay, as promised, I'm looking at aggregate. So aggregate works in the following way. So we want to go through. Oh, my keyboard's not working again. I don't know what is, something crazy's going on with my computer today, or VS Code, I guess. Yeah, anyway, I'm complaining. I try not to complain. No problem if else Google. I'm glad I was able to help you diagnose that. It's a weird, interesting issue. All right, so the idea here is, now that we have this list, what we're gonna do is we're gonna say, take that first thing. All right, so that first thing is, we're gonna call it ag. All right, so we'll say hash set char ag is equal to the first thing in our list of sets, so sets at 0. And then we do a for int I equals 1. So you start at the next element. I is less than sets.length .count I++, and then you iterate through each one and you apply this function. to the inside, and so next would be hash set char. Next is equal to sets at I. So the aggregate function, the aggregate method, translates to this. It says, take the first element in my list, and that's going to be my aggregate, and then apply the function repeatedly where next happens to be each element that follows. And so this builds up. So if you've heard of map, what is it? Map reduce. What is it? I feel like there's another part. Select map reduce. What is map? Is it just map reduce? Anyway, this in functional programming is often called fold. So in Haskell, this is fold-R. Anyone here even knows Haskell? In Haskell are saying this is fold. And so we're just going through and applying this chunk iteratively to each thing. Johnny boy, it's so nice to meet you too. Happy Saturday. Maybe it's Saturday where you are, I'm not sure. It's Saturday here in lovely Arizona, Saturday morning. Yeah, nice to meet you as well. So that's, I hope this helped explain a little bit what this aggregate is doing. Yeah, I guess, now that we're on the internet, now I talk about like we're in the future because we're online. So I'm doing, great question. I finished my solution for Advent of Code. Ray, good to see you. Good morning. I just finished my solution for day 3 of Advent of Code. Parts 1 and parts 2, I just finished those up. And I was just explaining, I wrote some code that I thought was pretty gnarly. It's now even worse. You can believe that my code got worse. It was bad before, but I've broken it up just trying to explain what I was doing with these higher order functions, so that way it would make some sense. But I've broken it down a little bit here. A programming Bible, the day of the Advent of Code. It's a fun little. Technically, I guess it's a programming competition. Every day for 25 days. So it's like an advent calendar. You have 25 little days, 25 little puzzles. And in fact, you have 50 puzzles. Every day there's 2 puzzles. There's sort of like an easy one and then a hard one. And you get these little stars when you complete them. So you can feel good, feel warm inside for getting some stars. Makes you happy, makes you smile. Yeah, so some of these can be done very, very quickly. I'm not gonna start it as soon as it comes in. I'm gonna take, I'm too old to stress out on like speeding through these. Too old. I as a younger me would have been super competitive about it. A younger me loved to do the ICFP competitions. ICFP competition. These are the coolest. I used a younger me back in 2007. I would do these every year. These are some like legitimately hard programming puzzles. Advent of Code though, not so bad. Advent of Code I think is super approachable by everyone. If you have a basic understanding, if you have an understanding of the basics, variables, loops, methods, and flow control, some kind of flow control, ifs, whiles, it's not ifs, switch, something like that to make decision logic, it's great. Do block diagrams. So I'm a teacher. I've tried that before. I have found it to be hit or miss. So I think block diagrams are really useful for students who, for there's like a subset of students it's really useful for. I think something like 70% of students, you can just show examples and how to use the debugger and it sort of starts clicking for them. Yeah, Ray, the link skills, that's, it's good stuff. This is functional programming. block diagrams can be they can be really useful for building up what I like to refer to as computational thinking through a problem. And so one of the first projects I do with my students is actually to have them write a flow chart for the rules of a board game. Yeah, so aggregate, so that's what I was explaining that here. These lines is what aggregate's doing. Okay, so these lines here are the exact, it's essentially exactly what aggregate's doing under the hood. So it takes the first element, so I have a list, sets, that's what I'm doing my aggregate over. It says pull out the first element, and that's gonna be your aggregate variable. That's the thing that's gonna be the seed that goes through, and then loop through the remaining elements of the list and apply your function. So next is gonna now take on the value of everything that is remaining. And actually, in this instance, aggregate is whatever you return in this function becomes the aggregate for the next. So it's not quite identical, but essentially the way I'm using aggregate right now is this line, these lines of code here. So it says basically squash everything down. So this is the reduce function in JavaScript. It's also called fold in many languages. Cool. Yeah, so but we just did Advent of Code. C programming, and I love C. A lot of people hate C, but C is one of the first programming languages I ever used, actually. I had this big book called like the C Primer Plus, which was fascinating. Yeah, Ray, let's take a look. Let's take a look at Ray's solution. Ooh, nice short solution. Not the most, all right, so I knew there was some subarray. Why couldn't I do this with my subarrays? This is doing, let me ask you, Ray, this is doing a subarray? I couldn't figure out how to get this to work. I was trying to do subarray, substring. I couldn't get my substring syntax to work that way. I don't know what was going on. I was losing my mind. So I gave in to this. And I know that if I did like a style cop, if I ran style cop over this, it would tell me like, you shouldn't use substring method. You should favor this type of substring. All right. So it does exist. I'm not crazy. All right. So, a select over I. So data. That must have been it. I was going crazy. I couldn't get it to work. So we are doing I is first off, I was grading you. If this was a code review, it'd be like I is a terrible variable name for what this is. This should be sack. I'm just giving you a hard time though. But if you're code golfing, this is the right way to do it. So we have data.select I, and then so for every sack in here, don't just pick on the I variable. Yeah. Dota 2. Thank you for the follow. I'm glad you're having fun, or I hope you're having fun. So we're gonna loop through. We're gonna get the substring. So this is the first half. So this is getting the first. Oh, does intersect work on strings? This is fascinating. I didn't know intersect worked on strings. The first chunk. There's too much to criticize. Then we're gonna intersect with the second half. So we pull this out. This here. All right. So this chunk of code here. This is a nice Haskell-y functionally programmed solution. This is why people hate functional programming. This is why people hate on functional programming, because you're in functional programming, you're encouraged to do this type of thing. And you're like, well, everything's just gonna squish it all in there. All right, so this is our first sack. This is our second sack, and we're finding the intersection of the two. You're turning it into an array. Okay, so we get an array of those things. So I would also, then we're gonna select, okay, I see what you did. All right, so we have that as an array. Then you're gonna group them. Functional and OOP, they're solving the same problem. Yeah, functional programming and object-oriented programming are essentially solving the same problem. Yeah, components is going to be everything from part one. So you've basically got all of those things, and then you're just going to sum them up, which is nice. Enumerable range, 0 to the data of everything. Ooh, see, this is beautiful because I wanted to do something like this and I couldn't remember how to do it like that. Oh, I love this so much. So my solution, I wrote a get sack. So I was going, I know there'd be some nice functional. In Haskell, you have a function called take, where you say take every 3, and then you give a list and give you back a list of lists. So that's essentially what I wanted. I wanted a thing that could say, we'll break this up into groups of, and I just, this is beautiful. I love this here. I love this here. Yeah, same here. I you know, I'm pretty new to C#. I'm certainly not an expert in C#, so this is nice. Select data. Yeah, this, I really like what you're doing here. You're gonna pull out each into groups of 3, and then you do the intersection on them here. So this is where I did my aggregate. All right, nice, nicely done. I really like your solution. I really like your solution. This was Ray. This was your solution. Yeah, really nice. Yeah, really nice. So let me ask. So my, not that my code isn't readable. I actually really hate how unreadable my code is. On this, I'm gonna have to come up with. So for my walkthrough video, for my students, I'm gonna have to come up with some nicer ways to break it down and think about it. String has intersect in C#. I love, that's cool. Hello, intersect. Wow, that makes sense though, because intersect is part of link. Get sack groups. What's wrong? What would get specifically? Well, so it is getting it. It's giving this thing. It's converting it to. So either get or to. I have to do get or to, right? So 2 sack groups. Do you think 2 sack groups is any better? I see. That's fair. That's a fair. Command/query over get and set. Yeah, this is from coming from a Java background. So get set is where my brain wants to go. So you could improve this. So the one thing is that since we know, so here's the thing. Since we know for sure that there's going to be exactly 3 groups, it's not entirely necessary to do an aggregate. An aggregate is just a more generalized solution that say, if I happen to have bigger groups, it will work on those bigger groups. That's essentially it. All right. So I think we're happy with this. What do I want to do next? I think I want to do a little work on my Unity project for my students. I gotta learn a little bit more about that. So I have about 45 minutes left here. Unless you guys have a better idea, I'm gonna work on my Unity project, which is gonna be a lot less fun to watch. I promise it's a lot less fun to watch. So I apologize. But I'm teaching next term. I have a Unity class I'm teaching. So I need to do some prototyping, figure out what projects I'm gonna do. for them. And one of the projects I want to do is sort of like a point and click adventure game. And so I'm sort of thinking through how do I want to build that assignment, build that project description? What are the things that I want to do in that project? So we're gonna shift into now, unless you guys want to see, in which case I might do something else. Ray, thank you again for sharing your solution with us. And of course, Unity is the world's slowest program. Takes minutes just to load the project. All right, so here's what I'm working on here. The idea is that there's going to be a location, and that location will have a name and a description, and then there will be like pictures, things on the screen that the user can click. Yeah, go learn about aggregate. Aggregate's good stuff. Good stuff. Useful to know. What is it? My brain is MapReduce. It's essentially part of MapReduce. MapReduce. Filter MapReduce. That's what it is. Filter MapReduce. That's the part. So these are essentially the core. What is MapReduce? Good question. Thank you so much for asking. What is MapReduce? Essentially, yeah. So my brain, for whatever reason, couldn't remember filters. So in C#, where did my thing go? We have filter MapReduce. So the things, what they're called, the function names in C# is reduce is aggregate, map is select, and I think filter is where. So in C# we have sets.where, that's filter, select is map, and aggregate is reduce. So it's like the functional way of taking data and like getting it down. So you do a filter to filter out all the garbage you need, and then map is select. So you say, okay, well now I need a select is like a transformer, transforms data in some way, and then reduce says compress it down, aggregate it into something. So in C# it is where, select, aggregate, because I guess they didn't want to say filter map. Okay. So I was in the process of trying to make it so that way I could switch location. Let's get my code open here. Yeah, so I have my name and my idea. I don't need any terminal. My idea was to have this subscribed to an iLocation. So iLocation or adventure controller. Yeah, so iLocation inside my adventure controller, and when that changes, then my location UI should update. This needs to subscribe to that when it starts up. We have a location name, we have this thing here. I wanted to make iLocations. I think I can like make them serializable. What is it? Editor. All right, make fields show up. So let's go to the almighty Google, and we're gonna do Unity class show in inspector. System serializable. Can I do that for system serializable? Is that for oh, can I do it for interface? I can't do it. Yeah, Dota, I do web dev stuff. So I did recently, last week before Advent of Code, I was working on a blog. A blog. Here, let me. It's amazing how many tabs you get open, don't close. Does anyone remember? Maybe I'm just an old person. Anyone remember back in the day before tabs? So the web dev stuff that I've done is, let's say I'm gonna go with I'm not a web developer. Let's open up the most recent thing I was working on. I thought it'd be nice to make one of the projects. I made a blog site in pure vanilla JavaScript. This is vanilla JavaScript. So web dev might not be the right word because I'm not using the framework. Let's open this up. I'll show you. I'll take you. Let me take you on a tour. Oh, you want to see my OOP chess program? All right. So I wrote this article. If anyone's interested, here's a link to the article. But all right, let's open up this where chess app. All right. So history of this project. History of this project is that there was someone on Reddit, just trying to shrink you, Unity. So here's the story of this. There was a post on the Learn C# subreddit, someone asking, hey, how do I test my program? How do I know if I have bugs in my program? I went through and I hand tested a lot of stuff and everything seems to work. And so, you know, I don't like to just arbitrarily post. So I read the comments, and the two top comments were, I just let my users find my bugs for me. Yeah, so I just let my users find my bugs for me. And I was like, nah, that's sad but true. I have been there. And I was like, well, this guy doesn't have, you know, this person doesn't necessarily have any users, so how are you gonna get your users to find your bugs? And then there was another one that was unit testing, integration testing, mutation testing. Look up these words, and I'm like, this is good advice. This is good advice. And so I thought, well, why don't I take a look at this person's source code and say, okay, here's an example of a unit test in C#. So that's what I was gonna do. And I opened up their code, and this is what I found. So do I have a tag here? Get tags? Oh, I'm in the wrong folder. Hang on. What's going on? All right. There we go. Did I make a tag? Get checkout pre-refactor. All right, so before my refactor, there were two files. There was program.cs, and this was essentially one giant uncommented main method that I was going, okay, not gonna be able to unit test this. Not gonna be able to unit test this. But there's some nice things going on with this here. So if we actually run this, hairy code is correct. Some hairy code for sure. But if we run this, we actually, this person has built a functional chess program in the console that's kind of pretty. It has colors, it has this board, and you can play hot seat chess. So two players could sit down and play a game of chess using this. For the most part, not all the rules are there, so it doesn't do checkmate. It doesn't check for checks. So you have, it doesn't do checks, doesn't do checkmate. You win by capturing the king. There are certain pawn rules that are not built in, and you can't castle. Those are just the couple that come to mind. But it worked. It was a functional chess program here. I was like, okay, well, I've always wanted to write a chess program. I've never actually written a chess program. So I thought it might be nice to go through and see if I could refactor this to be object. I have not heard or I don't know what Gilded Rose is. So I went through and sort of refactored it, git checkout master. Okay. So I went through and I refactored it to be object oriented. And I live streamed myself doing it. But essentially the process, so you can't do unit tests if you don't have units to test. So I said, all right, how can we make this as simple as possible? How can we reduce the complexity of this program? And so we sort of have this iPiece, which defines how pieces work. And we have the abstract piece, which defines the commonalities between them. Then each piece becomes relatively simple logic, each one. Gilded Rose refactoring kata. Now let's check this. What am I saying here? Oh, this is your answer to Gilded Rose. Gilded during kata was originally created by Terry Hughes. It's translated how to use this kata. Most ways, just clone the code and start hacking away, improving the design. You want to look at coding guild requirements. Okay, so you have. I can make a guess. I'm assuming that it sort of starts as a chunk of code, and the idea is to refactor. Is D sharpen? There it is. Do you have some program? And your goal is to improve the design. Is that sort of what I'm seeing here? That's the assumption I'm making. But yeah, so the design's a big mess. Yeah, so what is it? The book on refactoring by what? This is such a good book here. Book Martin Fowler, I think. Yeah, Martin Fowler's refactoring book. Fowler read this book as a freshman or maybe sophomore in college and was like, oh man, this is what I needed, and this should be required reading for anyone. So anyway, my goal with the chess program was to document what I did, and I'm thinking I'm going to try and turn it into a project for my students. So I really like this Gilded Rose refactoring thing. Right, so my idea here is to take the chess program that was written and maybe clean it up a little bit, but still have it be refactorable, like needing great refactoring, and then ask my students to come up in groups, design a better solution, build unit tests initially, and then go through and modify it, making sure through each step you don't break the original program. Thank you for sharing this. I'm gonna bookmark. Come back to we'll come back to it. All right, but yeah, I wrote the world's worst blog in vanilla JavaScript, which was a fun exercise. I think I'm gonna try it. So everything always is like, how can I turn this into a project for my students? I think coding, so students who I have in web development, I like to start them off with just pure JavaScript so that they get a handle on that flow, and then introduce them to a framework like React or Angular. I prefer something with TypeScript typically, but going from JavaScript to TypeScript is some students hate it initially, but they always, in the end, it's so nice. All my errors, how you sell all my errors, I find them before I have to run. All right. But yeah, we can take a look at my GitHub to blog site. This is not the nicest code. I could do much better. At some point I'm gonna refactor it, but this is the code for the world's worst blog. Pretty simple site. So I just have an index page which loads up articles, and then the article page which displays them. There's a couple modals built in. I'm using Bootstrap, so I didn't want to create all my components from scratch. And then to have a couple little things here. My backend is Firebase, so I load up my Firebase. This was an exercise. I don't know if anyone's ever used Firebase. Ray, I don't like JavaScript either, but it is it's a necessary evil for web development at this point. Dota, I had trouble with NoSQL to begin with at first as well. So it's a matter of what you're using it for. But I agree, NoSQL. I came from a relational database background into NoSQL, and always felt it feels really awkward sometimes because there aren't joins. So it's a matter of, well, how are you going to structure your data? You mostly program in assembler. That's hardcore. So here's my reason for NoSQL. Young students struggle. So struggle's the wrong word. Young students, it's a new thing. So learning how to write database queries becomes a new thing for students. And especially if you're just trying to learn. Whereas most students understand how dictionaries work. So really NoSQL in a lot of ways is just a big dictionary. The dictionary of key value pairs, and it happens to be a little bit more tree-like than, but key value pairs. And so using NoSQL is, my students have a lot more success with that. The other thing that I like about it, for Firebase at least, is you get their free tiers pretty nice. You get a lot to build toy applications. It's very easy. The major downside, yeah, I'm kind of on the same page with you there. In my career, I've really only used SQL in the companies I have worked for that use lots of data. So I was a senior engineer for 4 years at a company that processed about 2 petabytes of data per month, and their database could not be NoSQL because of the exactly. So Ray, that's exactly what I was saying. If your database isn't going to be giant, then it's kind of okay. But SQL joins and stuff don't really exist. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Postgres. I've worked on the Postgres binary before. The company we worked at, we had a custom version of Postgres we used to optimize for our data set. Really fun working on that directly in C. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna hop back into, I know it's not as fun, but I gotta make some progress on my maybe I'll do it off camera. Otherwise I really don't know what to work on. If you guys wanted me to work on something else, I guess I could, but I only have 25 minutes here. I don't know if I can actually make much progress on anything, but I'm gonna try here for the next 25 minutes to do something. So my location, ooh, you don't want to break your SQL database. That's no good. Ideally, and there's some debate on this. Ideally, you're using some sort of tool to manage your database schemas and stuff for you. Doing it raw is brutally hard. Guarded by database experts. Yeah, you definitely want some database expert. Okay, so I have to name this an class iLocation. Let's check this. Venture. And then I have to tell these public things. Unity add fields to inspect. Oh, it's because they're fields like this, isn't it? I made this. Ray, I updated it with aggregate, made it a bit more unreadable. That's exactly how people feel. This is why this is why people always struggle with Haskell, is because what one person in Haskell, people go, oh well, now it's more readable. It's more readable because you're using a higher order function. It should be more obvious what it's doing, but it requires you to have that knowledge. It requires you to have that knowledge. That's too funny. Unity show property in inspector. I have to. I thought if I just made it public. Oh, I have to put serialized field on it. I guess I gotta read it as hoping.net. Properties usually have private backfields. You could do something like this. Looks like free asset. Can we make in Unity? Can I expose properties? Use auto implemented. So I do have to tell it serialized. Serialize field so that we can will it only show up if I put it as a get set? Reduce does, yeah, reduce is doing the most work. So it is a little bit complicated. If I were to make this just a string. This is what I hate about Unity. Unity always sort of encourages people to have bad practice. Look at this. Look at this. Unity wants me to make all of my fields public. Makes me upset. Really want it to be a property at get, and I want to just be able to see it in the inspector. Can use auto. It seems to be, maybe do I need to do field? Let's try it. Is that all I was missing, Ray? I always feel no, it doesn't show up. It doesn't show up. I don't want it to have a setter. I don't want it to be settable here. I want it to have a get but not be set, but I want to be able to see it in the inspector. So now if I want to do that, I have to add in some extra stuff to see it there. Here, let me try. If I do set, let's see if it shows up. I've done it before, so I've written extensions. Yeah, so if it has set, you can see it. But otherwise, so I have a whole library for doing this type of thing where I say, okay, well, I want to be able to see it in my but I guess I don't really want to see it. See it there. And so what I have to do, yeah, it's there's some mild annoyance there with that in my mind. So this is what I consider a bad practice. I want to have a constructor for my locations. I guess this should actually just be location. Since it's not an interface, so I'm gonna create a class called location. This, and the idea is that when our adventure controller gets a new location, it's fine. It's fine. I'll just be grumpy about it. Okay, we'll just. This music is just change into something a little more interesting. I'm gonna change it real quick. Let's go to. Let's try. Try this. Try this. No worries. It only shows up in the inspector if you have it get and set. So I don't. And I want this to follow. I try to follow relatively good programming practice. So name and description like this, and then I'd have a constructor location. I want this to be sort of an immutable object, and so this is going to be string. When you create a location, you provide a name and a description of, and then get. Oh, can't do inits yet. Those aren't. Yeah, that's right. We're using C# 4.8 or something with Unity. This dot name equals name. Yeah, they don't. They don't. So I've done it before in the past. I wrote a whole thing. Exactly. It'll have a micro performance impact. That's exactly the issue. This is one of the things I complain a lot about with Unity is, although they use C#, they use it in very different way than it's like you would use as a .NET developer. There's all these practices that, and you don't do that. This. All right, so I want to, we have our current location, and we're gonna have a subscription. So I'm gonna actually make this. Dots? No, I haven't taken a look at dots. I don't even know what that is. So I'm gonna make this. This should probably actually be private, but if it just has a getter, we're okay. We'll do a getter and a private set for private set. Oh boy. Should I just give up on Unity? So here's the thing, I really like C#. The school I work at wants to have sort of game development type stuff in it. Fascinating. Students always want game development class. And so my requirement is they have to take a year of a C# class. So they can't just go into game development. They have to have solid programming backgrounds with me or another instructor before they can take the quote unquote game design class. And so it's actually called Introduction to Unity. It's not game design. You have opinions on my chess game? That's fair. It's fair to have opinions on the chess game. It's not perfect. Yeah, please do. I'll check it out. And my idea here is I'm gonna have an event. So public event on location change. This. And this is going to be an action location. All right. Quick fix. Let's import using system. Eee, that's dangerous. I should probably do system.action. Let's check out what Dota. Once you Give me your criticism and I'll open it up. On location change. So what we're gonna do is when our location changes. Oh yeah, don't trust me. If I built this from scratch, I would not. Get moves is pretty gnarly. Get moves. So this is based on. So again, I was refactoring the code that was originally there. So the original, the original code base happened to work in this way, and so I sort of was saying this is how I would have moved it into function. So if I were to build this from scratch, my get moves is just sort of where my piece's logic would be, but instead, or you just have a problem with the name get move. Move should be a command. Rather than returning a bool, you mean? I noticed you inherited to get the fields. Well, so I have just an interface. So I have an interface called eyepiece above. This is horrible here though. This, my brain wasn't working when I wrote this code here. So let's see, what does it do? It returns true if it actually did something. Yeah, so it's probably worth noting. So the issue, the game itself allows the user to just input anything, and then it will. So you can say, "Well, I'm going to try this move." So honestly, this should actually probably be called try move, and it would return. So you're right. It should probably just be a command here. I agree. This just happened to be the refactor that I did. There's plenty to improve upon here. I will never claim that my code is perfect or beautiful. This was just my attempt to refactor the code that was there. And part of it is I want the original author to be able to look in and see what it's doing. But yeah, I should probably, on the controller side of things, when I go to do a move, do that check. Sublogic. So when you're saying this method name is poor, sublogic, or that the target position. I agree. So again, this is historic, like a sort of historic artifact from the original code where there was actually a bunch of functions called logic or bishop logic, rook logic, etc. So what would you suggest for a better name? I agree. Sublogic, and this is just sort of naming is hard in my brain. This is the best I could do at the time. I appreciate the criticism. Moving rules. Okay. It is moving rules. I don't know if that, in my opinion, I don't know if rules is actually that much. What if it's called moving logic? Validate move. That's what it should be. No naming required when you're writing an assembly. Validate move. That is what it should be called. Dota 2. What do you think about validate move? I like the word validate in there because that's what we're doing. It's a predicate. It's saying given this target, can we perform the move? So we'd validate move. Or is valid move. What if I named it is valid move? What do you think of that? Many of them are. This one has no side effects. The only one that has side effects is move. So move is the only mutator here. Yeah, so the only thing that has side effects is move. So this should be is valid move. I like the idea of is valid. And I think get valid moves might be better, but you don't like the word get, so we might not call it get. All right, so I have this subscription here on location change, and so my location controller, doing a lot of context switching here, it might be confusing for some people. I apologize, confusing. So we have our location UI controller, and it needs to find when it boots up. When it boots up, it's going to register itself on our adventure controller. Boots up, it's going to register it's on our adventure controller. And I always struggle with what's the best way to do this. This should essentially be a singleton. So I want it to be a singleton, so I always struggle and I say, okay, well, should I write a singleton class? How should I do this in Unity? Should I have it search for it inside of the game? What is the, the quote unquote correct way to do it? And but I want my adventure controller to be my adventure controller, I kind of want it to be a singleton up. So what I often end up doing is writing in my singleton objects. I often end up doing this thing that I don't like, static adventure controller instance, like this, read only. Well, I can't make it this read only, so private only. So I end up with a public static adventure controller get this. Is this what I do? Then my private one becomes underscore instance like this. And then when this guy awakes, I think it's on awake. On awake. Might just be called awake. Unity awake. It's just awake. So when this thing starts up, my instance is equal to this thing. And that's the way it can't be read only here. Public void awake instance this thing. And then I want to do something that says if instance is not equal to null. No worries, Dota 2. When you find it, let me know. Although I am hopping off here in 5 minutes. I appreciate the feedback. I have something here that you're correct that it's not the best or cleanest code. My goal was to have an improvement. So if our instance is not null, I'm gonna throw new exception. I should probably do like an invalid. I always forget what the state exception is. I want to do a state exception. I'll do an exception here. Well, that's what I mean. The structure, does still, it's not perfect. It needs to be refactored. It was sort of taking it and refactoring it from its original state to this without losing the functionality of the program itself. Yeah. Could found multiple instances of adventure. All right. So it'll wake up, we get this instance. Right. And then the idea with our location controller is when it starts up, it should get our adventure controller dot instance, and it's going to register itself on this. on location change. So we'll have a private method here. Private void on location change. And this is going to be our new location. We need to update our name and description. So it'd be this dot name dot text is equal to new location name, and this dot description dot text is new location dot description. So whenever the adventure controller changes, the idea is that it should notify all of the observers. In this set here, we are gonna do the following. I need to have a backing. Private location, and the get is just gives us our location, and the private set updates it with the value, and then notify location change dot invoke with our new location. So this will notify anyone that's watching our location. So all of our important things will register them. And so our location viewer, rather than having something in our update, so it shouldn't be polling, waiting for it to change. Instead, we're just going to change it when it changes, like that. Right. So to test it out a little bit, I am going to need to add in some function to test it out. Let's take a look at what Dota 2 is showing me. Dota 2 has given me a link to. Oh, I see. So you're saying that anything that has, yeah, so we got our fields at the top. Right. So let me see if I'm understanding you correctly. You're saying like following the a generic principle is all of your functions should either only be getters, or what you're calling, I think, what did you call them? In my mind, I call them getters. And every method should either be a non-mutator getter, or a something that it returns void and is a mutator. Is that what you're saying? I think that's what you're saying. So if I look at my chess app, this Boolean here is not Boolean here. This Boolean here is saying, so this is a mutator. It's saying we can actually do it. Writing objects with behavior, they should mutate fields. Yeah, so this design's a little weird because the piece is sort of coupled tightly with the board. So this is, sorry, not a setter, a mutator, something that modifies the state of it. So this is tightly coupled so this design is flawed. What this should do is it should update the piece, and then the board should actually be an observer of the piece. So this design is flawed in that regard. But I didn't want to get into, again, so one of the reasons I was building this was specifically so that a younger programmer, someone who wrote, the original one, could learn the concept of, I'm going to abstract this out. I didn't want to muddle it up with the idea here that, yeah, so this game state is tightly coupled with the piece. So the pieces in the board are tightly coupled. And so I kind of am only modifying these fields here. So in the move, I only modify these fields here. So if you're writing objects with behaviors, so I am only modifying these fields here, and then sort of there's this idea of the sublogic of a piece to do it. But yeah, there's this tight coupling with the board that is weird and challenging to do. So I actually started making a chess puzzle game where I do it, I think, a little bit better, but I haven't finished that one. you wouldn't have abstracted a piece. Interesting. I'd be really curious how you would perform the logic for the pieces, because in my mind, when I'm thinking about the objects of a chess game, really it's the pieces that do all the moving, and they're aware of their surroundings. I would love to see your design for a chess game. It felt too complex to have it all built into the board that way. Although I guess I could have some static rules. You should do it. You should do it. It was such a fun exercise. I always wanted to make a chess program. I never did it. And then this sort of made me go through that process. Although it wasn't from scratch. It was sort of looking at a design that was already there and saying, how can I simplify this? If you do it, I would love to see it. Before I go here, I'm almost done. I'm a little bit over my time limit. Yeah, so prototyping is super important because you don't know what you don't know, right? So again, this was an exercise in taking and really reading someone else's code to understand what it did and trying to figure out how, okay, what would be the logical components. So in some ways you should think of this as these were logical components from a code base that I inherited. I wasn't writing it from scratch. But this is sort of like where it came. All right. Dota, I appreciate it all. I do have to run here. But come on back next time. And I'd love to keep talking about it. Row and column could be a board square, and that would have getters and set. I know it's a system, says Ray, it's a system setting. I need to update my Windows system setting. I know it's blinding. You can look at my face. I can see my face over here each time I switch it. The contrast on my face. That's how you know it's bad. Get a little strobe light going. Can I just click this button? Theme preferences, appearance. Choose a new GitHub theme, sync with system, single thing. Let's go with, oh, thank you. Thank you for the link. Thank you for showing me the way. Showing me the way. All right, everyone, I appreciate it. I do have to hop off here. I've been streaming for a little over 2 hours now. Or I guess technically I didn't start for 6 minutes, but about 2 hours here. As always, thank you so much for keeping me entertained. Thank you so much for being here. Otherwise, I'd just be talking to myself, which I don't mind. I don't mind talking to myself, but thank you for being here. As always, have a beautiful day. You're welcome back anytime. And don't forget to hit that follow button so you know when I'm going live. All right. Have a good one.